So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you all, wherever you are joining us from for this webinar. It's so good to be here on this 31st day of July. Happy Pan-African Women's Day to you all, our panelists, those who are joining us, and everybody around the continent and indeed around the world. It's a great honor to be able to do this. My name is Yvonne Okwara. I'll be a moderator for the day. I am a journalist and business editor from Nairobi, Kenya, covering the country and indeed the continent on matters business, energy, economy. It is my pleasure to be with you all here today on a day when we celebrate women, when we look at advancing gender equality and women's empowerment, and most importantly, also remember the contributions of African women in the socio-economic transformation of the continent. Now, today, Africa Business continues to focus on women, particularly in energy, with this fourth webinar. So it's really great to have you all here. The spotlight we're having today, as we celebrate Pan-African Women's Day, is taking a look at the role that women's leadership has played in propelling energy solutions across the continent. All matters from just energy transition, what that looks like, access to clean energy sources, and where the gaps are and how we can continue to plug those gaps. But also, more importantly, what it means for women in the energy sector. And I'm so glad to have such an esteemed, accomplished panel of women in the sector. Before we get into that and before I introduce them to you, I just want to remind you that we are looking to engage with all of you who are tuned in. So please send in your questions on the Q&A tab. So please use the Q&A tab, and that's where we'll all be looking out for your questions, and we'll have a moment to answer them at the end of our panel discussion here in just a moment. And so, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce my panel. And let me begin with Her Excellency, Dr. Amani Abu Zaid, who is a woman with 40 years experience in various leadership positions in international political and financing institutions, giving a strong pulse for Africa's priority, particularly for women. Twice elected African Union Commissioner in charge of infrastructure, energy, and digitalization. She's Africa's most influential woman, been recognized repeatedly for that. Dr. Amani Abu Zaid, thank you for joining us and welcome to this session today. Also on the panel this day is all the way from Senegal, I believe, including today. But a woman who was appointed managing director and country chair in Madagascar for Total Energies, and she's responsible for spearheading the company's energy transition roadmap. She became the first woman president of the Madagascar Petroleum Industry Association and is a vocal advocate for gender equality. Thank you, Mariam Sabso, for joining us here today. And we also have Charlotte Oban, who has 29 years of experience in this field. She is the founder of Greenwish Group. It's an investment and advisory firm that pioneered solar projects across the continent, particularly in West Africa, with the very first solar farm in Senegal. We thank you, Charlotte, for your time. Last but certainly not least, from Afrexim Bank, the director and global head of project and asset-based finance, it's Helen Broom, a woman who also before joining Afrexim Bank, has had decades of experience in various roles in Nigeria. Thank you, ladies, so much for joining us here, and happy Pan-African Women's Day to you all. How are we all feeling today? I'll start with you, Mariam.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Yvonne. I'm great. Happy Pan-African Women's Day to everybody who's joining us. And I'm glad to be on this panel and in such great company. And I look forward to the discussion.
Great. And it's good to hear from you all, Charlotte. It's great to hear from you, as well as Ms. Helen. So let me begin with you, Dr. Amani. Maybe just to start by giving us an overview of what the just transition means for women across the continent and how it affects them, understanding that, you know, the continent is not homogeneous and the experiences are different for various women across the continent.
Thank you, Yvonne. And first of all, allow me also in turn to thank African Business Magazine for organizing this important session, and to extend my greetings to all my sisters, all my brothers who are celebrating this glorious day for women in, in our continent. Energy is a very important sector globally, for us in Africa in particular. But it is almost tragic, not just sad, to say that still more than half of our population does not have access to energy. That's almost 600 million people. And this takes away from our economic growth. I mean, we're talking about we're losing points between 2 and 6%. So it's really a very, of our GDP, which is very, very serious. And that's on the energy, as people would think, energy as electrification, but there's also a missing aspect in energy that is even worse in our continent, and that is lack of clean cooking, which is particularly important for women. Until now, we have almost close to 1 billion Africans out of 1.3, I'm talking about 90%, who lack access to clean cooking and are still using like firewood or untreated animal waste, or so on and so forth, for cooking, affecting their health and their well-being. And this directly impacts women and children, and is one of the major causes of premature deaths in the continent. So the issue of energy in the continent is at a level of seriousness that is unmatched in any other region in the world. And why are we saying energy and women? Because there's a very close nexus, energy and women. Development in general takes everyone. It takes everyone to develop a region or a country. But for us, I mean, at the stage where we are in our development, we really need all hands on deck. So we cannot exclude women. We cannot just operate by, just half of our people. We cannot miss the creativity and the innovation and the energy of half of our people, that is women. And particularly in sectors as important as energy, but as in STEM in general. So that situation in Africa is one thing, the importance of having everyone contribute, and also the impact. Women are particularly impacted. I just mentioned clean cooking and other aspects. The third is the issue of, even when preparing this session, I'm sure all of us have faced this problem. We don't even have specific data when we talk about women and women in STEM, women in energy. I'm sure all of us preparing to this session try to find, reliable data, updated data to tell us about that. There isn't, which means that we are completely invisible in terms of research, in terms of visibility, in terms of reliable data upon which we can base our policies and strategies. So there is a real issue here about how to, on the one hand, yes, push the energy agenda on our continent, and something that we've been doing and continue to do, all of us here present, and also many others, especially at the African Union, where I had the honor to serve twice. But also to how to push women in STEM in particular as an exciting, areas and sectors. And I'm thrilled that my life, as an engineer, evolved all the way to be also at the decision-making level. And I would love it for our girls and other women, to be there, how really is thrilling to work in STEM in general and in energy in particular.
Yeah, thank you. And it's interesting that you mentioned the lack of data, because we all know how important data is in driving policy agenda, including decisions on where and how to make investments. So I think that's an important issue to bring up, and perhaps a call to action to all those involved in terms of enabling visibility of women in the sector. And so, Mariam, the next question is to you then. So what are the important factors that we need to consider when we talk about the just transition for women on the continent?
Thanks, Yvonne, for such a great question. I think in Africa, when we're talking about the just energy transition, it must be anchored in three things. I believe in reality, in equity, and in opportunity. When it comes to facing reality, Dr. Amani just mentioned it. I mean, we all know the numbers. 600 million Africans still live without electricity. Around the world, we're talking upwards of 2 billion people who do not have access to clean cooking solutions. And unfortunately, nearly half of them live on the continent and are still relying on wood and on charcoal to cook. So in my opinion, we cannot leap into the future by leaving people behind. The Western world, or I can call it the global North, has developed it well through the use of fossil fuels. And of course, in Africa, we must scale up on renewables, there's no doubt. But in the meantime, I strongly believe that we must continue to use all of our resources responsibly, including lower carbon alternatives like natural gas. The second point that I mentioned was equity. Again, Dr. Amani touched upon it lightly. Energy poverty disproportionately affects women and youth. So these marginalized groups must be at the heart of the transition that we're talking about. I have been lucky enough to live and travel across this beautiful continent and to meet women of all walks of life. And trust me, the kind of resilience that they display under the most dire circumstances, we should not think of them as passive beneficiaries, but rather as active leaders, entrepreneurs, innovators, people who can bring something to the table. And lastly, opportunity. I've been reflecting on this just energy transition, and I'm thinking that we need a shift in mindset. We should not see it as a constraint. It's not just a technological shift, it's a human one. It's an opportunity, and we must invest in education. We must invest in entrepreneurship and local content, especially for women. When we are thinking about the development of mining, gas, and oil resources in Africa, it's also an opportunity for the continent to get part of the financial resources that we need to be able to fund access to energy projects. Frankly, these developments will boost local economies, and as long as these types of projects are implemented in respect to biodiversity and local populations, we must be able to accelerate growth in all the countries that have natural resources. So yeah, that's my input on that question for now, Yvonne.
Yeah, thank you. Interesting about, the three-pronged approach that you've talked about, the factors that we need to consider, before we even begin to have this conversation. And perhaps those factors will start to guide, how we go about implementing policy, agenda, and financial investments as well. I wonder what the case is like, or what the approach or thought process is at Afreximbank, Ms. Helen. This is an important factor for Afreximbank in the work that you do in, asset-based and project-based finance.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. So this is a two-part question. So permit me to do justice in two phases. So Africa faces the dual challenge of advancing economic development while grappling with the severe consequences of climate change. And Africa is in a unique situation because despite contributing less than 4% of global emissions, Africa is disproportionately affected by climate-related events and the impact of climate change. Access to energy remains a significant barrier in development in Africa, with over 600 million people. Again, my colleagues have provided the statistics, 600 million people lacking electricity and 950 million people relying on safe cooking fuels. Energy poverty exacerbates economic disparities and restricts industrial growth. And this is where the concept of a just energy transition was coined, which is a critical issue because from an African perspective, a just energy transition calls for an approach that allows Africa to industrialize and develop sustainably while managing its emissions footprint. The fact that Africa has not even carbonized, yet is being asked to decarbonize, highlights the need for a balanced approach that addresses the pressing development needs of the continent. So Africa needs a combination of climate and development goals and a balance of fossil fuel use alongside cleaner energy sources to meet its energy needs. So a just transition includes recognizing the role that transition fuels like natural gas can play in ensuring energy security during the shift to cleaner energy. And I will be doing this question a disservice if I do not highlight the role that the African Continental Free Trade Agreement will play in the push for a just energy transition. The AFCFTA provides a unique opportunity to align Africa energy transition goals with economic growth and industrialization by promoting intra-African trade, facilitating technology transfer, and supporting regional collaboration. The AFCFTA provides an integrated framework to support Africa's journey towards a green economy, while at the same time building resilient economic ecosystems. Afreximbank has been and continues to be at the forefront of championing the AFCFTA. The bank prioritizes the mobilization of resources to foster collaborative efforts in expediting the AFCFTA implementation, which will promote the localization of regional value chains, which is also critical to reducing Africa's carbon emissions. Let me put this in further perspective. In 2023, Bank commissioned a study to understand what it would mean if Africa was to embrace an energy transition that ignored the use of our natural resources, such as fossil fuels. And the results of the study demonstrated that prioritizing carbon emission reduction over economic growth could further erode Africa's GDP by almost 15%. So moving on to part two of your question, at Afreximbank, we seek to play a pivotal role in balancing green industrialization and sustainable development while harnessing Africa's resources. So we support our member countries to realize the full potential and monetize their natural resources, particularly fossil fuels, because we recognize that fossil fuels will continue to contribute strongly to Africa's industrialization ambitions. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Interesting in terms of what that would look like in terms of the role that AFCTA would play in that and continues to do so. And, it's the hope that this is something that's accelerated with many of the countries, just not just signing up, but, ensuring that this becomes a reality across the continent. And speaking of monetizing natural solutions, that's something, Charlotte, you're doing with Greenwish, pioneering solar projects, particularly in Western Africa. Now, Greenwish, of course, is a major player in both decentralized and centralized energy solutions. So talk to us about the potential that these solutions would present, for this conversation around a just transition. And perhaps while doing that, let's talk about what some of those new technologies would look like for energy efficiency and how they would power the African continent.
Thank you, Yvonne, and thanks for this great panel. Really exciting. I like what Helen said, because we've been doing renewable energy and fostering energy transition for, at least for me, for over 15 years. But when it comes to the continent, my view has always been that there is a right mix for each country. And if you have fossil resources, you have to exploit them. If you don't have them and are reliable on import, maybe you have better things to do. But every country should have the right mix and capitalize on what is there. So I'm fully in line, even if my focus has always been on energy transition. So in the project we developed in Africa, there has been some grid-connected solar project and decentralized solution. We work specifically on the telecom sector with a view that I think is really interesting, which is investing on behalf of the operator, meanwhile reducing in solar battery, meanwhile reducing by 70% the carbon footprint, and improving their profitability by 30%, and improving the reliability of the network. So to me, they are solutions that have a triple bottom line. They were not solution driven by decarbonization, but by reliability and optimization of balance sheet from the operator. And this is a big driver for me. And now when you come to what is the right mix and what is needed in the continent, why electrification matter, we touch on it. But today, 10 years ago, when I started in Africa, we were all focused on the digital gap. But there was access to telephone, to the voice, a bit of data. Today, we are at a stage where power is a crucial commodity throughout the world. There is deficit of power with the high pressure of AI. And today, if we don't sort out the energy access in the continent, it's massive gap that are going ahead, and all of you touch on it. Be it on the health topic, we need storage for medicine, and especially on this digital gap and the AI that is really accelerating the gap, the with or without. Now, if you look at the deficit of power, it's 80% in rural population. We talk about 600 million, 80% are in rural areas. Guess what? Rural area, if you want to bring the grid, it's massive investment and there's never enough payback to connect the last mile. So it's very difficult to do it. Now, the great news is there are tons of decentralized solutions now that are mainly clean power solution with the mini grid, the off grid. If you have, digital solution, you can optimize consumption and production. They are, tons of technology that are today much cheaper. Mini grid, the cost of mini grid reduces in the last few years by more than 30%. I have the exact figure, but it's becoming very competitive. And what it unlocks, now going back to women, it unlocks productive uses. So decentralized solution enables, we talk about the cooking, we talk about anything that needs storage, cold storage, connectivity. Connectivity is today the major unlocker. And that means entrepreneurship, small businesses, a lot of businesses that are usually carried by women. So the matter and the potential of decentralized solution is massive. And there's a study that has been conducted in Kenya and Nigeria on the consequences or the profit of decentralized solution. It multiplied by 4 the income before and after access to electricity. And today, the good news, which was not the case when we started, decentralized solution represent 55%, more than half of the new connected people in the continent.
Yeah, important. Dr. Mani, you wanted to add on to that? Go ahead.
First, let me greet everyone. I think excellent comments and interventions by everyone, but maybe some of the thoughts that come to mind when I'm listening to all of you. The issue of transition, just transition, justice in energy. I wish, at least for us in Africa, we always highlight the issue of access, and we put the word access before we even talk about transition, given that the majority of our people, as we all recognize, do not have access. So it's access to energy and access to clean energy and access to clean cooking. This is, when it comes to energy, what we should be focused on. Two, I would also like us to understand and highlight and make sure that when Africa says we want access to energy, is not to electrify poverty. It's not to add a bulb in a hut. We want industrialization. We want our free trade area to function. We want to work on, make AI work for us. We want digital to work for us, not just to have a phone. So we want to make these big leaps. And this will not happen with, teeny tiny solutions, even though they are important, and they are very important, by the way. And this is where I support very much what Charlotte says. So this has to be understood that Africa energy needs are massive at a very high scale, and we're not only talking about small scale. Third point, it's what renewable energy brings, and I like very much what Charlotte says, is that there are new approaches. The nexus energy and digital is very interesting, and they are, mutually dependent or mutually reinforcing, if you wish. Digital provides new solutions for energy, like mini grids and other solutions, and digital would not work without energy. So they are mutually reinforcing, and particularly in rural areas, that would help. It's true that the prices are still expensive, but they are going down. Like any technology that is starting, prices go down. And the adoption of these technologies allow more people to get into the sector, especially women, allow more women to get into the workforce. Women in renewable energy is, we see them more and more, because also the solutions are very much different from the solutions based on fossil fuel, even though the solutions, the fossil fuel is still critical to our countries, is still, very much an essential part of our strategies and our energy sources, as highlighted by the African Common Position that I led at the African Union, adopted by all our countries, that highlighted exactly what is our position when it comes to energy, the uses of fossil, the uses of renewable, and even clean protein, and also of nuclear energy. Third, Mariam talked about local content, and I love that, and I loved it very, very much. Local content is not just about the technologies or providing, some material, but about the workforce. How do we train women and men to participate in the massive projects? I do not wish us to continue talking about small solutions for women here. No, we want the big solutions. We want women who own big enterprises, who have, who lead big energy businesses. We want women to get into, the big projects and the large projects, regional projects that are extending across our continent. So think of women also as, a major contributor, as a high level, highly skilled level that we should support, that we should first prepare, mentor, and support, and make them visible like we are doing today. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's a good place to go into the next part of the conversation, because when we speak about women in energy, it would also be not just the access that they have, the transition for them, but also the role that they play in leading solutions on the continent. And that'll be my next question in a moment. But just a reminder that the Q&A tab is open for you to drop in your questions. We will be getting to that in a moment. But that's a very good segue, Dr. Amani, to get into. Maybe, Mariam, you could tell us about the organizations that you lead, Total Energies Madagascar, and even with the Madagascar Petroleum Industry Association. So let's start to talk about women in the energy sector in terms of the careers that they take up and the leadership roles that they play. Mariam, what is it like in those organizations? Are there initiatives, drives, special programs to promote women in this career path?
First of all, let me give some context. At the Madagascar Petroleum Industry Association, the GPM, which represents all the companies in the energy supply and distribution chain in Madagascar, I am the only woman. And I'm also the first woman president of the association after almost 25 years of existence. And I wish I could say this is an exception or an isolated situation, but more often than not, when I get a seat at the table, there's no one else who looks like me. And yet we've all mentioned just briefly that women are the group that is highly impacted by the lack to energy access. And I'm sure the ladies on this panel can relate when I say that more often than not, when I have a seat at the table, there's no one else that looks like me. I have been a staunch advocate for diversity my whole career. Today, we're focusing on gender diversity because of the Pan-African Women's Day, but my definition of diversity is larger. Whether we're talking about age, whether we're talking about career experiences, whether we're talking about origin, when we have different opinions at the table because of our different backgrounds, the conversation only gets richer. The decision making only gets more comprehensive. So to answer your question, I'll give two concrete examples. The first one is an initiative that I'm proud that we implemented with my team when I arrived in Madagascar. We partner up with STEM for Good, and we launched together Total Energy's Girls in STEM. As we're well aware, women are underrepresented in the STEM sector in Africa. Usually, the number that goes around is that only 15% of the STEM professionals are women. And so in Madagascar, since 2022, we were able to empower hundreds of girls through active STEM clubs, and hundreds of young women were trained in digital jobs, and many now are employed. And I'm just going to give a small wink to the female robotics team that represented Madagascar internationally, because I was able to meet them and support them, and to just see at that early age how excited they are. It just gives me a lot of hope. And across Africa, when I think about my colleagues in Total Energies, they're also doing the same. We're investing in scholarships. We are training and doing mentorship programs from Mozambique to Uganda. There's a nationwide program, this continent-wide program, actually, the STEM Africa campaign. 6,000 plus students were reached, and happy to say 60% of them were girls. So we're not just opening doors, we're also building all these pathways to leadership. The second example I wanted to share is to circle back on the leadership roles, and not only talking the talk, but actually walking the walk. And I'm going to be very honest, at Total Energies, we've come a long way. I remember at the beginning of my career versus now, things have drastically improved. And this is why I say that I am proud to work for Total Energies and to have been able to witness the strides that we have made on inclusivity. And how were we able to achieve that? We set measurable targets. At some point, you have to be very clear about where you're starting and where you're trying to go. And we were able to do that. We had dedicated development programs internally. We have the Total Energies Women Initiative Communication and Exchange. We launched the Women in Energy Leadership Program. We were able to highlight female role models because I believe that representation matters. And all of that allowed us to have very honest conversations about where we were heading and be able to improve on that. And the recruitment process. Sometimes I chat with friends across different industry sectors and they'll say, oh, but we do not have women to be able to give them these leadership roles. But if you do not change your recruitment practices, you will always have that excuse. So you have to be very intentional about where you're trying to head. And yes, there's a shift. We can feel something is happening, perhaps not enough, but having platforms as these, all the work that all of my co-panelists and I do on a daily basis, I believe will further that further. So I'm quite optimistic about the future.
Yeah, congratulations on all the work that you've been doing, and hopefully we get to see more women like you leading that in Madagascar and across the continent. And I believe all the women on the panel related quite a bit to what you were saying. Helen, perhaps we can hear from you on this. Do you believe that it is important for women to be in positions of leadership within the energy sector? Does that affect, how decisions are made that would be able to address the gender gaps for many women that we're speaking about here?
Thank you for your question. So I would say that at Afreximbank, we're focused on providing the necessary support to empower women, not just internally, but also externally. 25% of our leadership roles are held by women. And I would attribute this primarily to the vision of our president, Benedict Orama, who is a strong advocate of gender balance and is very intentional about promoting women empowerment. That being said, Afreximbank has implemented a robust set of initiatives to empower women, particularly those leading or owning SMEs. And we do this with the ultimate goal, helping women achieve professional development and attain leadership roles. And a key priority of the bank's development programs is focused on addressing inequalities, particularly gender inequalities. 83% of our program beneficiaries are women-led SMEs. And this is also broadly aligned with the AFCFTA objectives, which emphasizes integrating women entrepreneurs into cross-border value chains, where we extend financing to SMEs and women-led organizations through financial intermediaries. We actually stipulate that a portion of the funding is provided to women-owned or women-led businesses. In the past 2 years, the bank has conducted numerous capacity building programs, including incubators and accelerators, as well as facilitating over a dozen workshops. And these initiatives have benefited more than 3,000 SMEs across 40 countries in Africa. One of our very successful programs is our Showcase Her program, which is a collaboration with Impact Her and is a capacity building organization dedicated to empowering African women entrepreneurs by bridging the gender financing gap. It's a 3-year accelerator program aiming to prepare 1,500 African women-led SMEs for global value chains through export readiness and digitization training. And this also closely aligns with the SDG 5 goal on gender equality. So the goal is to facilitate access to finance, increase visibility by showcasing women achievements, and increase export readiness in sectors such as energy, and it extends to agribusiness, manufacturing, and even the creative industry. In 2023 and 2024 combined, we trained 1,500 women across 23 African countries and 7 Caribbean nations. There's also our Export SME Development Program, and this program provides non-financial support for export-oriented SMEs with a strong focus on women-led businesses. And it emphasizes export readiness and business growth to enable women scale their enterprises and assume leadership roles in trade. Finally, we have our Intra-African Trade Fair, and this takes place every 2 years. The next one is coming up in Algeria, in Algiers, to be precise, between September 4th and 10th. And the IATF is a platform and a marketplace where buyers and sellers meet to explore business opportunities. So it's a platform for B2B and B2G exchanges. Since our maiden edition of the IATF in 2018, we've been supporting women-led businesses to attend this fair. In 2023, we sponsored about 320 women-owned SMEs to physically exhibit, and also an additional 300 to attend virtually. So I encourage all women who are on this platform and listening to this to try and attend the next IATF, which I said is taking place in Algeria. And then just ending with financial support from women-led businesses. At Afreximbank, we ensure financing through intermediaries. And that ensures that it includes a portion for women-owned businesses, enabling them get access to capital for growth and leadership. And the impact is that it continues to support women in securing significant financing. We have numerous success stories on how the impact of our financings has helped foster economic empowerment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Helen. And just to highlight what you've said, funding is, of course, very important for women-led SMEs, but it goes beyond that. And it's about training them and making them market ready and giving them the skills that they need to adequately succeed. Because while money is one thing, it's also about, increasing and, bringing up their capacity to run the businesses and to adequately compete. So that's great. And thank you for all the work that you do, and not just with the funding, but also downstream. I'm coming to you, Dr. Amani, in just a moment. Give me one moment. I just want to get into the educational initiatives, and then we can come back to you, Dr. Amani, in a moment. Because we're talking about funding women in leadership positions, funding women running the businesses. But what about on the other end, which is ensuring that there's enough training and education and upskilling women from particularly a younger age. Charlotte, I don't know if you want to talk about some of those initiatives that you...
Is it okay?
Charlotte, sorry,
yeah.
May have lost you.
Yeah, it cut a bit. No, fine.
No problem. I wanted to talk about upskilling youth and particularly perhaps younger women and girls. Talk to us about some education initiatives to ensure that we're upskilling women in some areas.
Yeah, okay. I'll stay focused on my part, which is more energy and energy transition. Yeah, definitely the training is a key factor. But I think it's a global challenge today. The transition of the economy is going so fast towards this new energy technology as well as the digital, that throughout the world there is a massive question on future of jobs and what is needed. Now, if you focus on the continent, I believe, we know there's deficit of financing, government struggle, again, everywhere in the world, but even more in Africa. And the private sector has really a key role to play together with international organization, public initiative. The private sector needs to take the role of supporting the training of the resources they need. And I think of a couple of initiatives that I find very admirable. One is the utility of Côte d'Ivoire. They created this Centre des métiers de l'énergie to train people that are employed in the energy sector. So it's a hybrid private public initiative, which I think was very topical to create the resources that were needed. The second is this amazing private initiative, which is Honoris, I'm sure you know, which is a private sector, private equity backed company with, I think they have over 75 campus throughout Africa, with a very broad spectrum of training, including a lot in tech, clean tech, but also, of course, around the digital, at a very competitive cost, working together with the companies, relying on Honoris to train the people they need. And I believe it's a great new model that I've seen a couple of times in Africa, and I believe in. I just want to make a couple of comments or bounce on what we shared earlier to Dr. Amani's point about we want women to be big and leader and not only the small companies. I'm all with you. And in fact, I took the entrepreneur route, which is not always easy as a woman, I'm telling you, like Mariam experienced at Total, and congrats, Mariam, for what you've done at Total. But what I like about the entrepreneur, but of course, for me, it was my way to get the rhythm I wanted, work as much as I want, when I want. That was my way to find my balance as a mom, as a professional, and, with authority and all that, which is also very challenging. But I believe, going back to what I share on decentralized solution, there are tons of scalable, replicable business when you start from the bottom. I started on, grid connected project, infrastructure, large infrastructure project. Today, the major differentiating factor is the cost of capital. When we started over 10 years ago, the market was not there. You needed the clever entrepreneur, finding the way, bridging the need between the contract we needed from utility, the sovereign guarantee we needed, the project that were bankable. You had to be agile. Today, to me, it's a big utility market. It's a cost of capital, and you have to be big. So there's one track for women, which is super great, talented woman like Mariam, like Hélène, going into the corporate world, okay? And they are the entrepreneur. And I believe there's major space for women to be great entrepreneur, on building scalable businesses, be it in the commercial, digital, decentralized solution and everything. So that's the point I wanted to make. And in terms of technology, I just wanted to add one point I didn't mention earlier. Sorry for the side comments. Because today, my new ventures are more focused on energy efficiency. So basically, in a world that is growing in terms of energy consumption, but also we see all the geopolitical challenges of being dependent on resources and energy import. There's one major topic in terms of competitivity, which is consuming less or consuming better. And so we started this new business called Disco, first in Europe, but with a view to be much broader, about efficiency on energy consumption, specifically on the real estate sector. And when you look at the continent, there is about 50 million housing unit deficit, and you have this massive project of real estate going everywhere. There's huge opportunity of smart building and clever, energy efficiency on the real estate sector, which is one of the big topic also on the continent. So I'm very driven by innovation, and I see where the lever, in terms of environmental, social impact, meanwhile creating new businesses. So I just want to put this because it's a bit new for Africa, but energy efficiency will be part of the solution, also for women.
Absolutely. Thank you, Charlotte. Doctor, you wanted to add, Dr. Armani, you wanted to add something?
There are so many things. It's very interesting discussion, but knows that we've been leading the energy efficiency across the continent for more than 4 years now. And same thing, I mean, when we introduced, actually, when I arrived at the African Union, I, put the focus on clean cooking, which was not a subject anyone wanted to talk to. Now, when I see that the day I left was taken up by a head of state, Madame Saluha of Tanzania, that is, gives us hope. But I wanted also us to remember that the barriers for women in this sector is not just about barriers to finance, access to finance. There are stereotypes, there are biases, there are cultural bias barriers that deeply ingrained that for women to go into, or girls to go into STEM education, STEM training, and to continue later on, even when they graduate. That's where we have a problem, because we do have a good number of girls in our STEM colleges, but what happens is that later on, the work-life balance, the majority of the tasks, the chores, of the house, the caregiving, are upon women's shoulders, preventing her from pursuing her career if she wants to pursue a career. And also there is the barriers at recruitment, as highlighted by Mariam, and the way, sometimes the environment is toxic, does not allow women to wish to continue in leader positions in some organizations. This happens, but I want to give also the positive things. Let us remember that, you mentioned that I was twice elected as Commissioner for Infrastructure, Energy, and Digitalization, twice. The one before me was a woman. The one who came after me is a woman. This is how important, this is the African Union, is also the only international organization that by law, is 50-50 women and men at all positions, especially the leaders' positions. It is by law. It's 50-50, and we are the only ones in international organizations as such. Second, we led, as I said, we started in 2017, the Women in Infrastructure Network, because we wanted also to make visible all these wonderful women across the continent who are, carrying out these important positions as leaders of the companies or organizations, or managing or leading them or owning them. So that's important also to think of women as leaders of big infrastructures or energy or digital organizations. Charlotte mentioned herself, and that's great. And by the way, this is not always obvious. My first name is Amani, and if you lived in Cote d'Ivoire like I did, it's a man's first name. So very often, you said you were the only one in the room, Mariam. No, they were waiting. I get into the room and then they're still waiting, and I'm not sure what were they waiting for. And then when I asked, they said, we were waiting for Mr. Amani, as if I cannot be a woman. It was, and when I was elected, even in Cote d'Ivoire, they said, Dr. Amani, the man, Amani from Cote d'Ivoire was elected. So it's ingrained in people's minds that the leader has to be a man, and we have to change that. But going back to the good stories, at the African Development Bank, led by a man like, the visionary Mr. Orama, but also Mr. Kaberuka. In international positions, the situation gets even more complex, because when you work in international organization, you have to move out of your own country. And very often we found that women do not want to take these positions because they are unable to get out of the country, because the husband doesn't want to move or prevents her, and so on and so forth. And when she's there, when she's in this position, she is unable, if you work, in energy or in infrastructure, you have to go to certain sites, to follow up with the work or travel. If she's a mother, and what to do with her kid. African Development Bank, again, instituted that at least 50% of any shortlist has to be of women. That is, again, something that was introduced, and he would not consider as leaders, the top positions, the president of the bank would not consider any shortlist that does not have at least 50% women. Moreover, going into a mission, if you are rearing a child, the bank would pay for you, for your child, and for a nanny to go and help you when you're doing your work. This is the level of dedication of an African institution that I doubt any other international, private or public or otherwise institution in the world would do. So I want to also mention these examples because, and they came from men, by the way, that how we want to support the women leaders, we want to support the women engineers, we want to support the women in these sectors, and we want to make sure that they stay, not only are recruited, but they stay and they strive in these positions. Thank you. Before I forget, please, access to finance is not just about access to finance, but also it's about forgetting that, put aside, I'm sorry, Ellen, but women is not just SMEs. We want the big enterprises. We want the multi-billion projects. So, and we have to have, but also in procurement. We introduced at the AU that at least 10% of procurement of these large projects have to be attributed to women-led enterprises to make sure that they are contribute, effectively in these projects. And there are so many initiatives, Girls Can Code, or the many other projects that we are having that focused on women at the level of the continent. Thank you.
Thank you. For what it's worth, your first name, Amani in Kiswahili means peace. So if ever they had it, and it's mostly a name to women in Eastern Africa.
It's different in my region, North Africa, it's for women, but in West Africa, it's the man that comes, the boy that comes after twins.
Oh, okay. All right. That's good to know. So I want us to get to the Q&A really quickly. We've got about 4 minutes left. So ladies on the panel, if you can answer these questions in the shortest time possible so we don't keep you all. We've almost come to the end of what's been a fascinating conversation. I'd like to begin by asking this question. How can educational, private sector and public sector collaborate more effectively to create stronger pipelines for women in STEM fields relevant to the energy sector? Who would like to take this one up about education in public and private sector and ensuring that there's a nice chain that goes all the way up? Anyone who wants to take this one on?
Yeah, I can.
Charlotte.
One quick word. To the point I mentioned, education has been rather from the essential services and public services, service duty. And as I mentioned, the economy with innovation and youth sector is going so fast that I believe the private sector can contribute both financially, but also on the scope of work and define, what are the training that are needed. And then government can adapt, I would say, especially on the earlier year, which is very difficult to link to the private sector in terms of training, vocational training. So I would say the early ages are probably more education, public driven, while vocational can be more taken care of by the private sector. But I believe that the public sector should never give up, its role and responsibility in education, and leave it to the private sector, because these are essential services, human rights, and I believe that regulation is still important in terms of training.
Thank you, Charlotte. The second question is for you, Mariam. Considering Pan-African Women's Day, how does Total Energies, through its local content development and community, even just in Madagascar, contribute to economic justice and empowerment, especially for women in the communities where you operate?
All right. Thank you for the question. But just before, I wanted to add what Dr. Amani said, that I have this great collection of letters that have been written to me throughout my time in Madagascar, where every single one, they refer to me as he. Everything says Monsieur, le directeur général, and it doesn't matter how oftentimes we correct that. It is just, it has become a bit of an inside joke on that. But going back to the question on what we do for women in terms of local content, in Madagascar, we are very clear in terms of our supply chain, and we have very clear KPIs. of how we want to make sure that women are involved and have access to the same opportunities when it comes to working with Total Energies. And that is in Madagascar. But whether it is our project in Tilanga, in ECOP, and that's why I was referring to having very clear targets. This is the same thing that we have rolled out. There is not only our environmental impact assessment, but there's also our human rights impact assessment, when we make sure that whether it's gender-based violence, that the women, the same one who are affected by this lack of access to energy, are the ones that could potentially be also benefiting from these programs. I know we're a bit short on time. I could keep going, but Yvonne, I see you blinking, so I think I'm gonna keep it short. Do I have just 1 minute to make a final comment before?
Go ahead, because I was going to go into final comments, but you can kick us.
Okay, there you go. Because
Yeah.
you mentioned earlier at the introduction about giving advice and guidance to younger women, and just last week I was invited and I gave a commencement address at a graduating ceremony, and the girls asked me the same question. What is it that we could do differently? What have you learned from your experience? And there's so much I could say, but today I just wanted to focus on seeking training and innovation, because I believe you should never rest on your laurels. You should upskill yourself. You need to be curious. You need to learn. You need to have that unquenchable thirst for honing your skills. And these days we have artificial intelligence. Don't shy away from that. And I've seen what a difference it can make. At Total Energies, we have a program called Startup of the Year Challenge. It's organized across 30 countries to support and fund young entrepreneurs. And last year, I met this inspiring young lady, one of our winners in Madagascar. Her name is Nirin. She had her project, Eco Coco, using coconut waste to make sustainable charcoal. And I could just see that innovation. And the last point is to leverage your network and visibility. Oftentimes as women, we hesitate. If I call this person, if I add them on LinkedIn, if I share a message, will it be too much? I'm not ready. You're overthinking things. Join professional networks, join mentorship programs, promote the work you do. And even if we don't answer immediately, someday it's going to make us stride. So I'm just going to leave on that. Let's be bold. Today is the day to do that. And I am very glad to be on this panel once again. Thanks a lot, Yvonne.
Thank you, Mariam. Be bold today, right now. Thank you for that. Helen, your final thoughts, even as you give perhaps some advice and a bit of your experience that can help inspire others.
Thank you so much. So, I would just say a couple of things. We live in a very dynamic and ever-evolving world. So it's important to be nimble enough to reinvent yourself continuously, just to navigate through and be able to pivot in life successfully. Over the course of my career, I've had to reinvent myself numerous times, not just to take advantage of opportunities as they present themselves, but to actively seek out opportunities. Because as been said, as women, we undeniably suffer from several biases. So we have to be quite intentional about seeking and pursuing opportunities to steer our careers in the right direction. The ability to constantly learn, unlearn, and relearn has almost become a critical skill for success. So it's important to embrace the opportunity to grow and evolve alongside the industry. So always have a growth mindset. I would also say that it's important to build a strong support system, and your support system shouldn't be limited to your immediate family. It can be colleagues, can be friends. In building a strong support system, it's important to identify your secure base, and a secure base can be a person or even a place that provides a sense of protection, because as women, we do need that. And it's also important to be confident enough to take risks. None of us has a crystal ball, but I believe that every risk you take that doesn't quite turn out as planned is a learning experience. And I'm sure you must have heard the phrase, doing it afraid. 15 years ago, I made a decision to leave a thriving career on Wall Street to move back home to Nigeria. 3 years ago, I also took a leap of faith to embrace the world of development finance, again, moving from Nigeria to Cairo and embracing a new career trajectory. And I would just end by saying that it's important to develop the right skills. It's important to equip yourself with the right technical skills, the right soft skills to navigate the world of energy and finance. And the process of equipping yourself with the skills is a lifelong process. So take an active interest in updating yourself in technology evolution. In today's world, there's several mediums of providing access to information that were not available to us, over 20 years ago when we started our career. And, leadership really, if you think about successful leaders, it's all about authenticity because it builds trust. So it's important to embrace genuineness, transparency, and self-awareness. So in all you do, it's important to focus on your essence, first as a person, and then secondly as a woman. Thank you very much, Yvonne.
Thank you, Helen. What great advice there, and that this is a lifelong quest, right? There is no final destination as far as that goes. Thank you very much, Helen. Charlotte?
Yeah, I already touched on my recommendation earlier is, well, we are not all given the same chances, but trust yourself, be bold, don't sacrifice too much on whatever it is you have to, that matters for you, be it professional, personal, or as a mother. Don't sacrifice too much, find the right balance. Definitely reach out, find mentor, find peers. As an entrepreneur, I was so happy to have peers because you are really alone. And I've been involved in many initiatives of women support, women empowerment. I started at Morgan Stanley in 2006, which was quite new at the time. Then we set up women leaders in infrastructure in Europe, then Women Africa, Women Initiative in Africa, always, bringing the sisterhood and the mentorship. It's super important. Be bold and trust yourself, and reach out if you need some support and a bit of, no, let me be polite, a bit of courage. Thank you very much. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you for all the work that you do and for that inspiration. Finally, Dr. Avani, your final thoughts.
Well, again, I'm very much inspired by this panel, so it's there's little to add to what my sisters have just said. But I'll just give you what a female mentor told me at Harvard, that she gave me a motto that I live by: be there on time, dressed to play. So be there, be prepared, and make sure that you are there and you're visible. Don't be shy. On time, and that's very important because and then dress to play. And when I say dress to play, have all your tools, have all your knowledge and all your courage, and just go for it. Thank you.
Be there on time and dress to play. Thank you. I think we couldn't find a better way to end this conversation. So I just want to, before I thank you all and finish this, to just address a couple of questions that are there. I see someone asking for the transcript to continue the conversation. You're a newly formed group on mums in academia. That's great. This will be open to all of you. There will be a recording that will be shared with you all. So please do look out for that. I think we'll be able to send out an email with the link in just a moment after this. So please look out for that. Yes, a recording will be shared of this webinar. And I know we didn't have time for all of the questions, but please do send them via email, and we can perhaps send those through to our panelists, and they can find some time to answer some of the questions we couldn't, because we've had such a great conversation and quite a few questions to get through. I want to thank all of you for making the time for this webinar this year. It's the 4th series of the African Business Magazine webinar on women in energy, and we're thankful to all of you for making the time. We also want to congratulate you on all the work that you've done in the energy sector, be it in private sector, public sector, in policy, in financing, as entrepreneurs and as those in employment. Your leadership stands out with the work that you do. The work that you're doing also to help others go through that door is also something we greatly appreciate here. And to everybody else who's joined us here, it was good to have you all, close to 70 people who've joined. We thank you for your time, for your questions. And I just want to close this by once again wishing all of you happy Pan-African Women's Day. And may these conversations continue to grow. Hopefully next year when we have this conversation, we can talk that the needle has moved, even just a little bit. Then we will have done the work that we all hope that we can do to ensure just energy transition for all, but particularly for those who are disproportionately affected. Women, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us in this series. We hope to see you again on the next one. Bye.
Thank you, Yvonne. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yvonne, for great moderating.
Thank
Thanks, everybody.